Today, on Rise Up, a report on the persecution faced by believers in Jordan was presented at the 57th UN Human Rights Council. Sacred Dialogues. We delve into some of the key teachings of the Qa'im Aba Al-Sadiq from his lecture series, The School of Divine Mysteries. Miracles of the Mahdi brother Haytham testifies to the divinity of God's messenger in this day and age. Dreams and Synchronicity. Sister Rozita shares her spiritual experiences that enforce faith in the call. The Mahdis Manifesto. We discuss the latest writing of Aba Al-Sadiq with Professor Arya Razfar from the University of Illinois. And finally, Medicine of the Mahdis. Groundbreaking discoveries in the medical field from the divine knowledge of the Riser Aba Al-Sadiq. This is Rise Up.
Hello and welcome back to Rise Up. I'm Alia Halal.
Good morning. I'm Irfan Alamgir.
And we are happy to be showing you and presenting to you the call of the Savior of mankind in this day and age. And that is Abdullah Hashim Aba Al-Sadiq, from him is peace. This name that I'm saying right now, that is the name of God's messenger on earth today. And we are his companions and his disciples. We are a people that believe that allegiance is to God alone. And here on Rise Up, we like to bring to you the news around the world, what's really going on with this community, with this religion, and to present to you the movement that is calling towards humanity first.
Yes, it's another, we have always to talk about what's going on the ground, because what's happening on the ground is a reflection of the times that we live in. There have been reports of escalating war in the Middle East. And there is many things that we wanted to talk about on the show, and I think the intro really does set the stage up for what's coming up. I think the first thing that we were going to talk about was actually the persecution that's been happening in Jordan of members of our faith. And 6 of them are basically on trial on charges of heresy. And really wanted to sort of delve into that first and then take it from there.
It's a dire situation, and it's not something very surprising or new. We know that through history it's always been the case that those who believe in the messenger of God and who are not following the mainstream institutions that they are commanded by authorities and governments to follow, those individuals end up being persecuted for simply exercising their right to the freedom of religion. And we're seeing that in Jordan. Unfortunately, 6 of our members are being taken to court, tried as heretics. The word heretic is a very terrible word to use, a terrible label, because it indicates that the individual has rejected God and abandoned him, when this is the furthest thing from the truth. And yes, these individuals who have very bravely held on to their faith despite the severe abuse that they have faced, and we've brought this up on the channel before, they have been terribly abused and harassed by the so-called police, the so-called legal officers that are supposed to be protecting their civilians in Jordan. They're doing the exact opposite. And now the situation has escalated, and that's why bigger players have come into the picture.
Right. We have, for example, the director of CAP, the Freedom of Conscience, who has brought up the plight of these 6 members of the Ahmadi religion of peace and light in Jordan at the 57th UN Council hearing. And thank goodness that people like this exist, because at least it brings light on a terrible situation. To be called heretics on the basis of practicing your faith in your own home and being put on trial with possible consequences of imprisonment, or even, as mentioned in the article published, is capital punishment. So this is a very, very serious matter. It's happening in real time in Jordan, a country that is always obsessed with putting a good image in the West, and this absolutely tarnishes that completely. And the fact that these 6 members are being treated in this way and with such a severe penalty at stake, it really defies belief.
The fact that the 57th Human Rights Council at the UN is actually going to be and has actually had that report presented by CAP Freedom of Conscience. It just goes to show the severity of the situation, and small matters are not brought up in these council sessions, and that's why it's necessary that we recognize that this is indeed a very severe situation and something that has even been brought up all the way to the 57th session of the UNHRC. We actually have a clip that goes right into what went down at the 57th session regarding the Ahmadi religion of peace and light. And I'd like us to go ahead to that segment and check out what was happening and how Freedom of Conscience presented this report that has to do with our brothers and sisters in Jordan who are being persecuted. So let's go and check out that segment on the 57th session.
The 57th Session United Nations Human Rights Council was presented with a concerning report regarding the persecution of the Ahmadi religion of peace and light in Jordan.
Coordination of associations for those for freedom of conscience.
Right Without Frontiers, we are deeply concerned about the arrest in Jordan in late July of 6 members of the Ahmadi religion of peace and light, a new religious movement founded 25 years ago. They were just distributing in public in Amman flyers which simply describe tradition related to the appearance of Imam Mahdi. They were detained in inhuman conditions, mice and rats infesting their cells. They were released on bail after about 3 weeks of detention. But they were forced to pledge a payment of $70,000 should they ever publicly express or again propagate their religion. They will be prosecuted for allegedly insulting religious feelings of others and inciting sectarian strays. Since 2016, the authorities have arrested several members of the community due to their divergent beliefs from the traditional Muslim views. They have subjected them to repeated brutal interrogation about their faith, which is considered to be heretical. I thank you.
Thank you.
The Human Rights Council's ongoing efforts to uphold rights globally are highlighted by the situation of members of our faith in Jordan, an example that underscores the challenges facing religious freedom and the pressing call for increased international unity in addressing such clear breaches of rights.
So for merely distributing and disseminating these little posters, these flyers in the streets that give people the hope of the advent of the coming of a figure that leads people into a divine just state, into peace and prosperity, they are literally taken, arrested, interrogated and put into jail. So this is what's going on in Jordan at the moment. And I just wanted to read a little passage which was published on the website of the Freedom of Conscience website, and it goes as follows. It says, from imprisoning the Ahmadi religion of peace and light leaders to shutting down their places of worship and trying to suppress their voices as a religious minority. And then it goes, the quote goes, the Jordanian government needs to be responsible for not respecting the rights of its people no matter what faith they follow. Stated in a written note. The global community should act promptly to push Jordan to stop this mistreatment and safeguard the Ahmadi religion of peace and light group and other religious minority groups in the nation. I think the Jordanian people, as far as I know, are believers in the Prophet Muhammad, and they are Muslims by and large. So if people are sharing his knowledge in the form of narrations that he uttered with his blessed mouth, and they're saying to the people, this is what the Prophet Muhammad is saying, and we are people expecting the return of this figure, and to say that and then to be arrested for it, it really, I think the Jordanian government needs to look in the mirror and see what they're doing. And like I said, their image is being irreversibly tarnished internationally, and to put these people at risk and to say to them that they potentially face capital punishment is completely unbelievable.
I think that it shows a lot about the state of the world right now and how things have transpired, because we cannot say anymore that we believe in freedom of religion if people are also being taken from the streets for distributing pieces of paper that are not inciting violence or creating chaos or discord or anything, just flyers that have on them narrations from the books. And if that is so threatening to the government and to the authorities, then that's very troubling. And it seems to be that in general, in the Middle East, there is that overall overarching air of an Orwellian society that's almost going on. It's like a dictatorship, and it has to be recognized. The United Nations have recognized this. Other human rights organizations have also recognized it besides freedom of conscience, such as Human Rights Without Frontiers and Amnesty International. We know for a fact that being from this religion openly in countries like Malaysia or Thailand can actually get you prosecuted. Legally speaking, the court itself has a legal right, according to these countries, to prosecute you and to subject you to various abuses and torments. This is a problem. This is a mentality issue. This is something where we cannot see a bright future going forward if people are being treated this way. Let it be known that the people of this religion believe in humanity first, an ideal that should be the ideal of all religions. Yet we find that religiously, they are trying to have a holier-than-thou stance by taking off people from the streets and calling it Islamic. While again, that is the furthest thing from any Judeo-Christian Islamic religion or sect. It has nothing to do with the true ideals of Abraham and his prophets and messengers from his lineage. So the whole thing is, very frankly, a bizarre joke. It's a scandal. It has nothing to do with God at all. And to try and make it that it's a righteous move to prosecute and persecute innocent men and women, that is something we cannot stand by. And I believe, Dr. Irfan, that that is something that God himself also does not stand by, and it has something to say when it comes to the state of the Middle East in this day and age.
Yes, exactly, Ali. And if we look at the example that history tells us, what happened in the past and in Europe, it's still something that's talked about and given a lot of airtime, which is the persecution, the rounding up of the Jewish people.
Yes.
Right? And how they were treated. And if this is the first step, look what ended up happening. We had a world war at the end of this. So there is very much a need to highlight the atrocities that are being done in Jordan to innocent people who are just sharing their faith, who are propagating their faith. And it's a great honor to be able to stand on this platform and address this matter and to bring it to the attention of the global community.
I think that if we look in general at the state of the Middle East, and this is something that we really want to hone in on now, because the state of the world right now is, like you said, it seems to be reaching that point where we found in history, and this is a very bone-chilling reality that we have to address here. We've seen in history that similar incidents have taken place, as what you have referred to, and the result or the consequence of those inhumane decisions that were made, and how humanity till this day is regretful and remorseful over the condition of what took place back in the 1940s. Now let's take a look at the state of the world today. Right now we're finding there's an entire region that is in a very big mess. From every angle you can look at it, when it comes to the poverty rates, literacy rates, the fact that people are finding it difficult to find bread on the table at night, the fact that electricity and clean water are luxuries, the fact that we're talking about a region where if you do not obey your government in any shape or form, you are immediately in a great deal of threat, and so is your family and your loved ones. The Middle East right now is not a happy place.
The Middle East,
plainly put.
Yeah, it's certainly not a happy place. And if you look at the Middle East from a satellite view, you see it as a barren wasteland. And AbA from in his piece has referred to it as such because what is going on in these lands is so against the ideals of the Prophet Muhammad and what he taught that it's completely beyond recognition. When he spoke about the Ummah, his nation, and how they should live and what they should be doing, they are completely the 180-degree opposite of that. And as a consequence of disobedience to the Prophet Muhammad and his religion that he came with, we are now experiencing all of these difficulties. And it's really interesting, isn't it, Alia, when you look from east to west in the Arabian Peninsula, it is all desert.
It really is. It's a desolate land. It's tragic that that's the case, because it's supposed to be a rich, fertile land that, according to history and according to the records, it's not meant to be like that. Even the Holy Quran, when it mentions the place where Prophet Muhammad and his family were living, it's mentioned to be a place which was saturated, and there were plants growing around, and there were fruits growing there, and that kind of description is given to the reader. And right now we find that the Middle East is having to import everything that it needs from the West, which is absolutely ridiculous, because it wasn't meant to be that way at all.
Yeah, and you know, I can hear some people say, well, what about the petroleum? What about all this oil, this black gold that we have? Well, sometimes a blessing can also be a curse. And in this situation, how have the people of these regions benefited from the oil wealth that these nations have? I mean, you've got these huge skyscrapers in the UAE. You've got all of these palaces that the Saudis own. You have all of this luxury that a few enjoy, but the vast majority are living in poverty. They are malnourished, they are illiterate, and they live in lives of quite desperation, hoping for a savior to come. And in this time he has, and he has arrived. So the poor, the oppressed, it's in their best interests to get a hold of this manifesto that has been written in English and in Arabic and in many other languages, and see what is written, and see how it is a roadmap for the poor and the oppressed in the world. And this is what we are calling the people to. We don't want people to have this enormous inequality, this huge gap between the ultra-rich and the vast majority of the human beings that are living on the planet. There is enough to go around. And the psychopaths, unfortunately, that are ruling the people, they don't want to share. They just want to build what we call generational wealth. They are talking about their next generations, all of which has been set up. They have palaces in their homeland, they have palaces in Europe, and they have palaces in America. And the wealth of your nation is being taken abroad by these people and hoarded in mountains of gold. The people have to acknowledge and rise up to the fact that these people are not the solution. In fact, they are the linchpin, they are the root cause of every problem that comes onto them.
Exactly.
And until they unite and remove them, and then more importantly, put a leader that God has appointed in charge, then and only then will they know peace and prosperity.
That is exactly how it is. And it's a very troubling reality. What you're describing right now, Dr. Irfan, this is a really troubling landscape. You know, this is like a very terrible script for a very, very sad movie almost. You're listening to the story and it's heart-wrenching. But we have to take a step back and we have to look at the bigger picture. We have to factor God into this, and we have to understand where we're standing now so we can know where we're headed to. And as hard as it might be, and as painful as it might seem, as inhumane as it might sound, it is the reality that we are living in. So let's take a step back and look at this. The Middle East is currently experiencing what the Torah, the Bible, and the Holy Quran have described as a state that is mentioned to be punishment. That is the word that is used. If you look at the Torah, if you look at the Holy Quran, if you look at the Bible, when you hear the words drought, famine, earthquakes, natural disasters, poverty, hunger, war, rumors of war, bloodshed, all of these terrible things I've just mentioned are very simply meant to be punishments. Now, this is scripturally how it is defined. The mechanism behind the punishment and how it happens and why it happens, that is something different. But it is clearly that these terrible situations are consequences. Now, why are they consequences? Well, we know that scripture tells us that God does not send a punishment until he has sent a messenger. So perhaps we should look at our recent history and see, is there a situation or a time where we find that God has sent from himself a man to the people prior to everything going downhill, prior to something so terrible happening there? And indeed, we do find that, let's take a step back, before the 2000s even hit, before we see war emerging and just exploding across the map in the Middle East, let's take a step back and look at what happened before the 2000s. Let's go to 1999. What was going on?
Right. In 1999, we had the appearance of Imam Ahmad al-Hassan from him his peace, the Yamani, the first claimant of the will of the Messenger of God, who came out and he said, I am the Ahmad mentioned in this will. And in that time, Saddam Hussein, who was the tyrant dictator of Iraq at the time, was busy writing the Quran in his own blood. And Ahmad al-Hassan actually pointed this out and said, this is an abomination that he has done, and he will pay for this. And the scholars at the time in Najaf, one of the main Shia seminaries in the world, were not uttering a word. Of course, they were very,
in fear
very
of their lives.
Tremendous fear. And the Imam came to these scholars with the will of the Messenger of God and other knowledge as proofs that he is a man from God. And they completely rejected him and completely turned their backs to him, and also tried to kill him on numerous occasions, him and his few companions. And then in the aftermath of that, we have this 9/11 Alia happens.
Wow.
And when 9/11 happens, there are certain things happening in America at the same time. There is this neoconservative movement where they are advocating that Saddam be removed from power because it's in the best interests of the United States. So all of these things happening is for a reason, and the reason is rejecting and trying to murder the Caliph of God in the land. Of course, after 9/11, we all know what happened. The weapons inspectors went in because the US and the UK were saying that there are weapons of mass destruction there. They went there, they said, we can't find anything, we need more time. And of course, we had President George W. Bush, who, under the preemptive action, he was telling his people, look, we don't want another 9/11, we have to act now. Iraq had nothing to do with 9/11. And then there is the invasion in Iraq that killed over 1 million people. We had the United States go in, all guns blazing.
Total invasion taking
Total
place.
invasion. And Iraq was completely decimated.
Until today, it's suffering from what happened back then.
Yeah, it is still reeling from the effects of that war. And the tyrant was indeed punished for his criminal action that he did. And Saddam was removed. But as Aba Al-Sadiq mentions from Prophet Muhammad in his manifesto, the manifesto of the Mahdi, he says that a time will come when something will go away or will be removed, but then something even worse will follow it. And something worse did indeed follow it. And the governments of the tyrants continue, and the oppression and subjugation of the Iraqi people became even worse after the demise of Saddam. So the warning signs are there. God sends a prophet and a messenger. People reject him, and then the consequences are there for all to see.
I'm just going to ask our producer to place on the screen some of the screenshots that we have of what was happening and what took place due to this terrible war that happened in Iraq, and the entire world remembers that. We can place on the screen right now some of the imagery of what took place. It's not anything too graphic because we don't want to show you very graphic imagery, but there is, and people know this, there is graphic footage and imagery out there of what took place back then. It is inhumane to mistreat another human being, and we are not saying that the mistreatment of the human beings is something God is wanting. We are saying that God warns from the effect of our evil actions, of our misdeeds. There is a karmic response from the universe. There is an energy that has to be returned. And when you commit an action, there is a reaction. And God warns us from falling into a hole. He warns us from putting our hands into the lion's mouth. And when people do not take heed of that, and they decide instead to go ahead and try and murder the man sent from God who has been vouched for in the will of Prophet Muhammad in order to keep their authority or keep their seats, then the problem is that the people begin to fight with one another. There's a very fascinating part of scripture is the story of Prophet Habakkuk in the Torah, where a people were attacked by another people. But the attack was not because God wanted this or because God instigated it. Rather, it's because He knows that it will happen if the people don't take heed. So He warns from it. And when people do not take heed, unfortunately, what God has prophesied does take place, and that's what we saw happening in Iraq, and it was a direct consequence of the rejection of Imam Ahmad al-Hassan.
It's interesting, Alia, because they were protected all of this time.
Exactly.
Because the proof of God had not come upon them yet. And in 1999, when Imam Ahmad al-Hassan emerged from Basra and he went to the seminaries in Iraq, everything was fine. In the sense that the country as a whole under Saddam had at least a semblance of stability.
Yes.
You know, there was water in the taps. There was at least the basic things that human beings need to live. But then once that rejection happened and Iraq was flattened completely and all of its oil wealth that was supposed to be used for the people was then taken away. It was taken away by the invaders. And the invaders established these huge complexes in the country. And we all know what happened in Abu Ghraib and all of these other places that came as a result of that. So when a tyrant ruler and the clerics reject the man from God, it is not just them who pay, but all the people who quietly sat on the fence. They also actually pay much more than the tyrant. And they're still paying for it to this day. And Iraq is still suffering.
Yes, exactly. We're seeing that that's exactly what took place. It's like an action-reaction situation. And then we move forward to a further time in history. And I do want to mention that Imam Ahmad al-Hassan has some sermons that you can check out on our website, which is on the screen right now. And in these sermons, he's very clear. He's very clear that bad things will happen if people don't wake up. And he's urging them and imploring them to open their eyes to God and to not reject God again. And because they did not take heed of that, he had prophesied that a terrible situation will befall Iraq and please wake up, O people. And they did not wake up. Then we fast forward to the next point in our history, in our recent history, where the next name on the will of Prophet Muhammad comes into play, comes at the forefront. The next name being Abdullah. And Abdullah, or Aba Al-Sadiq, came out as the Qa'im of the family of Muhammad, being appointed by Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him and his family, in his holy will in 2015. And then we find that after putting the proof upon the people, Imam Ahmad al-Hassan informs Aba Al-Sadiq. This is around 2017, 2018, where he says to him, there will be a small creature that will emerge and that will bring the world to its knees.
And to a standstill.
And to a standstill, if the people do not take heed of the fact that Abdullah from the will has claimed the will and is bringing people towards allegiance is to God. And what took place right after?
A small creature. Is a virus not the smallest of creatures? Did COVID-19 not bring everything to a grinding halt around the world? Was it not a cause of major concern? Did it not cause the deaths of millions of people? Did it not cripple the economy? The whole world was put into a standstill, and we have images that depict what happened in the aftermath of COVID, and these pictures speak 1,000 words. They really demonstrate that when, as Alia mentioned, that after 2015, when Aba Al-Sadiq raised the black banners from the member of Egypt, upon which was written allegiances to God, and the people rejected him, and he prophesied this sign would come. And this time, it wasn't just Iraq and the Middle East. This time, it was the whole world. The significance of this is very, very important and something to contemplate on, because we all lived through COVID-19. Many people lost loved ones. Many people still experience the symptoms of COVID-19 in the form of long COVID. It hasn't gone away. It is still mutating. But we have people dying in hospitals. We have airports at a standstill. And the whole world was forced to reflect and look in the mirror and see what was going on. And this is the time when Aba Al-Sadiq said, I am Abdullah, mentioned in the will of the Holy Prophet Muhammad, and I am claiming my right. And of course, history repeated itself. What happened after 1999, when Ahmad al-Hassan came to Iraq, happened globally when Aba Al-Sadiq raised the banners. And when he made this claim globally, it was very, very soon afterwards, 2018 you said, and then 2019, at the end of 2018 is when COVID became like a global phenomenon.
Right, exactly. That's why it's called COVID-19. It hit in 2019 at a degree and at a rate that was baffling, that was overwhelming. The whole world stopped, and the images that you've seen are very frightening for a person who's really awake and understands that the suffering of humanity is a terrible, terrible thing. Again, COVID-19, simply a virus, but something that hit, not unlike the plagues of Moses and not unlike the other diseases and ailments that peoples have seen in history due to rejecting God's messenger on earth. And plagues and disease are a very clear sign of the end times and a very clear indication of a punishment by God, a consequence of rejecting the man who can bring peace to the earth, rejecting an individual who can stop the violence and hatred and the chaos and the madness that you see around you in society. That individual being rejected has to have its consequences. And God is He's a very jealous God over his creed and over his stance. And this is what we see right now happening. He cannot allow that these psychopaths take the throne and take people who are innocently passing flyers out in the street, get abused the way that they did in little dark cells, as if there is no God watching. There will be a consequence, and that is not something to be afraid of. That is something to be aware of. It is something that will happen. We then find that just over a year ago, Aba Al-Sadiq, from him his peace, goes on the pulpit and delivers sermons where he is very clearly presenting the seventh covenant to the world. And he says to the people of the earth, know that the seventh covenant has come to you, and that there will come to you those signs of the end times that will be disastrous and will really, really change the world at large. Therefore, board the ark of salvation. And it is after he says this that we find all around the world, men and women are waking up to the seventh covenant and rushing towards him. And the community of Aba Al-Sadiq, from him his peace, grows. And the people are growing in number and are accepting the covenant and are working towards humanity first. But then you also find that these pockets of individuals who are angered by the seventh covenant and angered by the gold of the wise being released by Aba Al-Sadiq, from him his peace, they in the Middle East decide to take swift action and to immediately persecute the members of this faith.
Ali, you presented that graphic, I remember, in one of our previous episodes, where you had shown in a red circle the date that Aba Al-Sadiq spoke in this sermon, and he said some very prophetic words. He said, soon jets will be flying overhead. And now we see in the beautiful land of Lebanon, the land of the prophets and the messengers, that exact same vision playing out.
Wow.
And this is, again, this time you really, really have to think deeply, because COVID-19 was a precursor. And if you think COVID-19 was bad, what Aba Al-Sadiq said in his most recent sermons in 2023 is prophesying something much worse. He said plagues worse than COVID will come. This is another warning shot to the people to say, pay attention. Look what happened in the past from the prophets and the messengers mentioned in the Bible and the Quran. And now look at the modern times. When the first claimant of the Prophet Muhammad's will, Ahmad al-Hassan, came in 1999, we had that devastating war in Iraq. And then after that, Aba Al-Sadiq raised the banner in 2015, and then COVID hit, and now in 2023, he is sounding the alarm bells to the people. Will they reflect on his words? This is the question.
Exactly. I also want to mention that we are on the ark of salvation. This is the truth of the matter. Aba Al-Sadiq, from him his peace, is that messenger from the lineage of the Ahlul Bayt, the family of Muhammad, peace be upon him. And he is that individual who is calling the people to safety. God in the Holy Quran says that there is a stronghold, a rope to salvation. And we know that the rope to safety and salvation is Muhammad and the family of Muhammad. So the man who has been sent from their line is indeed that individual that we all must run towards. And we have believers, and this is the incredible thing. We have believers in Aba Al-Sadiq who are in the most dangerous of places, the most insecure lands, who are protected, miraculously protected, who are somehow, they are shielded by God's mercy. And we do have believers in the Middle East. We have believers in Syria and in Lebanon, believers who have been taken by their families, taken to police, taken to court, and yet God has His hand over them, and they are protected and preserved, and they hold on to their faith, they hold on to the goal of the wise, their book, and they hold on to Aba Sadiq, and they are indeed in a place of security. God does not break His promise to His people. So is this the Ark of Salvation? Yes, the seventh covenant is the only way forward for people to know about, and this is why we're sitting here on this set in front of you, in front of the camera, telling you all, please take heed. There is something new going on now, and waking up is imminent. It's key. You have to. The situation is critical.
Yes. And we don't have any expectation from the tyrannical governments. They will keep doing what their forefathers did. The tyrants will not change. You know, Aba Sadiq is giving these warnings to the people. He is telling them from the pulpit, this is a last warning to the people, change. Of course, the tyrants are not going to heed this. On the contrary, they are busy arresting members of our faith who are promoting and propagating the message of Aba Sadiq on the ground in the form of flyers. It is their responsibility to do so, and they feel that it is their duty to warn the people. The tyrants are going to persecute them, imprison them, kill them, which is what they've been doing. But we are really appealing to the hearts and minds of the people, the oppressed people of the world, the oppressed people in the Middle East and elsewhere. You must stand up and rise and support this call and support Aba Sadiq. This is the only solution. This is the only way to board the Ark. This is the way you get that ticket that allows you to board the Ark of Salvation. That if you raise your voice against the tyrant and call for the true leader to sit in his chair, the chair that's been usurped for far too long.
Yeah, and I do want to mention that what is the alternative?
Yes.
What is the alternative to the situation right now? Do the people want to stick to and hold by men who have been sitting on the throne of power in places like Iraq, in Saudi Arabia, in Iran, in any country you can imagine in the Middle East right now? Do they want to hold on to those tyrants and the scholars who are telling them to be silent while their children are dying in front of their eyes and stealing from their pockets and right in front of them shamelessly? Do the people want to hold on to that, or do they want an alternative? Because the alternative presented to you is the words of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and his family. The alternative presented to you is a man who is from the lineage of Prophet Muhammad, who is saying that he was appointed by name in the holy will of your own messenger. So now the question is, do you want to hold on to what you already have, which is basically living in your own graves? Or do you want to check out what else is out there? And if there is a God, has He appointed a man? And if He has appointed a man, was it through His messenger Muhammad? And if it was through Muhammad, what was his name? And when you read his name written by the very script of your own messenger, then what do you have to fear except not running fast enough? What's to lose? Why hold on to what you have now when what you have now has led you to this?
Right. You know, my heart does bleed for the people in the Middle East in particular. And it's because, Alia, there's an expression in English that says being stuck between a rock and a hard place. So on top of them is this oppressive rock in the form of the tyrant that is ruling them. And then when the people live under these dire circumstances, what do? They go to what they know in terms of their religion.
Yes.
Because people, even in COVID-19, by the way, there were record numbers of attendance in churches in America. So when a calamity does hit in a nation of faith, the driver is to go and seek a spiritual answer, right? And then the people living in these circumstances, they go to the religious scholars. They say, hey, look, there is a people who are saying that the Mahdi's come.
Yes.
You know this Mahdi that we've all been waiting for? That the Prophet Muhammad spoke about over and over again and said how important it was to reach him and give him allegiance because he will give victory to the poor and the oppressed. And the scholars are like, yeah, really? Show me. And the person's like, look, they're picking up this will and they said that this name is mentioned and this is what all the previous prophets and messengers are doing. And the scholars are like, I don't know about this one. I will call the Ayatollah and ask him, and then I'll come back to you. And this is the kind of problem the people are facing. So the religious scholars are not the solution. They are a big part of the problem. And the tyrants, of course, we all know about. So again, we keep saying the same thing because it is important to repeat the crucial importance of this message. You have to follow the Imam, the messenger that God has appointed, or there is no way out. You will be stuck between this rock and this hard place, and you will be crushed completely. And God doesn't want that for you. He wants you to have happiness and peace, and not watch your children die in front of your eyes, and not watch your relatives be buried under the rubble of the buildings that they lived in, which are the images we're seeing coming out of various places in the Middle East. And it will get worse. Key people have been killed, figureheads of organizations have been killed, and this is the recipe for escalation. And before things get to a point of no return, Aba-Sadiq has offered you a manifesto for you to read and reflect upon, and make that decision that enough of the tyrant, enough of the scholars, we are following God and His messenger.
Exactly. Do take heed of what we say, and we present to you the teachings of this great messenger, of the Riser Aba Al-Sadiq, of the prophesied figure that people have been waiting for hundreds of years. This man has appeared now, and we present to you his teachings, we present to you his message, we present to you his manifesto, and we'd love to now go ahead and check out from his own words what it is that he has presented in his lecture series, The School of Divine Mysteries. The School of Divine Mysteries is a beautiful playlist of lectures that have been produced by the Mahdi Has Appeared YouTube channel, and you can check out the full episodes right there on YouTube for free. But in this episode, we'd love to actually extract some of the key statements made by the Riser Aba Al-Sadiq and discuss them in front of the viewers. We have a phone number on the screen. You can actually join the conversation by calling in. So let's go ahead to the first clip that we have from the School of Divine Mysteries by the Riser Aba Al-Sadiq. From him is peace.
We have more specific narrations that talk about, the death of King Abdullah, for example, as being a very close sign. And we've mentioned that in several episodes. And we, in the Shia used to always speak about that. How easy is it now to see all of these prophecies coming to pass? How blind is the person who sees all these signs coming to pass and questions the time that we live in? So what do we do in this time? Well, Muhammad and the family of Muhammad, they commanded the Shia. They said that if you happen to see these signs, if you happen to witness this age, then know that the Qa'im, the Mahdi, will be knocking on your doors. Travel to him through the clouds. Travel to him even if you have to crawl on ice. Go to him, even if you are locked in a box, break out of that box. Even if you are trampled dead, then arrive to him. Perhaps, just perhaps, the believers who end up reaching the Qa'im, the believers who end up unifying together and coming together as a collective force, perhaps they survive just because of that. In a world where everybody is for their own, and neighbors are killing neighbors over bread or over a can of beans. Perhaps in a chaotic world where bullets are flying all over the place, electricity goes out, nuclear disaster has taken place, murder and rape is around every corner. Perhaps the companions of the Qa'im find protection in one another, and they find a safe haven.
The safe haven. The safe haven being knowing where the Mahdi is and running to him. And the scene that was depicted right there by Aba-Sadiq is incredibly heart-wrenching, and it's not too far away from us. It's happening every day now in regions that we've mentioned on this episode, and he's presenting that door to realizing that there was a narration that said the Mahdi would appear and exactly when he would appear. And if we have faith in the words of God, if we have faith in the words of His messenger, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him and his family, then those out there who are claiming to be Muslim have to take heed of the fact that there was a clear narration that mentioned the death of King Abdullah of Hijaz, and that mentioned that that was the point where the Mahdi appears.
Right.
It's not a matter of insanity to have faith in these words and to think to yourself, who appeared at that death? And it is only one individual, and that was Ahmad and Abdullah from the will of Prophet Muhammad, and Abdullah at the forefront.
Yes, and Aba Al-Sadiq uses, his language is so clear, his words are so powerful. He is saying that these are the words of Muhammad and the family of Muhammad that I'm telling you. That if you see him raise his banner, and if you see him claim who he is, you have an obligation to crawl over ice, even if you are in a box, to come out and support him for your own salvation. God doesn't need us, we need God. This is the essential truth that I think needs to dawn on us now. We've tried, and you've patiently lived under the tyrant's rule, and you've persevered with these corrupt, perverted scholars of the religion who do nothing but misguide the people and misguide the masses. So now, heed the words of your Prophet. Look at the calamity that is on the horizon, fast approaching. Some people have tasted it already, but it will get worse and worse and worse until the people call out for the Mahdi. But why do we have to let it reach that level? We don't want it to reach that level. We want you to look at what is in front of your eyes. The words of the Prophet Muhammad and the claimer of his will, Aba Al-Sadiq.
Exactly. And to reach him, no matter what it means, by any means necessary, just in order that you come to that point of salvation and security. Whether it means having to leave a job, whether it means having to break away from a lifestyle that you're comfortable with, or from a country that you love. At the moment, things have reached a point where not being around the Jesus of today, or the Abraham of today, or the Adam of today, not being around Aba Al-Sadiq from him his peace, is something that the people will one day wish they had taken heed of and thought sooner, and realized earlier that this was what they were meant to have done in their lives. And that's why the narrations, can you imagine, hundreds of years ago, like literally, like think about this, hundreds of years ago, the successors of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him and his family, the imams from his lineage were warning people, saying, look, there's going to be a time where you're going to really, really wish you were with the Mahdi. So make sure you get there, even if it means crawling over ice, even if it means breaking out of a box. They're being so descriptive with what it could mean, because they knew that this period we're living in right now is going to look like this. So imagine that that's how merciful God is, that hundreds of years earlier, He had already given us the direction of what to do. So to not listen to that is honestly just willful ignorance at this point. It really is.
Yes, and that willful ignorance is the point that I wanted to just draw on a little bit now, which is that if you think, oh, it's just the Middle East, this is a local problem, these people have been at their necks for each other's necks for like years and decades and decades. Well, this Middle East is controlling the global economy. The things that we find comfort in, our wives, our children, our jobs, our security, our house, all of this thing is connected. This is the phenomenon of globalization. This problem in the Middle East will extend very, very quickly. And when you see the trucks that are bringing food to the supermarkets stop because there is no gasoline to put inside of them, and you have to taste hunger for the first time in your life, then you will feel what the people in the Middle East feel. We're a connected society now, and it will very soon come on your doorstep. It is so important that for those who are now living in the peace and security they enjoy, to realize that very soon another plague could hit us. And all the scientists, the chief scientific advisors to the prime ministers and presidents of the world are telling them about various threats, one of which we mentioned before on the show, the H5N1 virus, swine flu, which is rapidly mutating from different species and on the cusp, on the verge of infecting, going from animal to human to human to human. And when it goes from human to human, God help us, because COVID will look like a stone in the pond in comparison to the tidal wave that's coming in terms of the infections that are on the horizon. So please take these words seriously. We are all connected. We will all feel the repercussions of a war in the Middle East if it breaks out, which has already begun.
I mean, it's happening right now. Let's ask someone who's been pulled out of the rubble whether or not they think they're in the state of war. I'm pretty sure they'll agree that this is not a good situation. So yes, absolutely, the situation there, is it a war? It looks like it is one. And we're waking the people up as much as we can to the reality through these words of Aba Al-Sadiq. Let's go ahead to the next clip of Sacred Dialogues and see what else Aba Al-Sadiq, from him his peace, has taught us.
We have more specific narrations that talk about, the death of King Abdullah, for example, as being a very close sign, and we've mentioned that in several episodes. And we, and the Shia used to always speak about that narration, and that narration was fulfilled to a T in the death of King Abdullah, because the narration says that basically there will rule Al-Hijaz a man whose name is the name of an animal. And he was described as being cross-eyed from afar, but if you get close to him, you don't see anything in his eyes, and that he would be succeeded by a brother of his whose name is Abdullah, and that brother would have a big problem with the Shia, to the point that 3 woes were sent against Abdullah, or the Shia were warned 3 times against him. And then it said that if he dies, then the Qa'im would appear, or the Hujjah would appear. And that's exactly what we saw happen. We saw a man, ruled Hijaz, whose name was Fahd. Fahd means leopard. He was succeeded by somebody who was not supposed to succeed him, his brother Abdullah. And Abdullah, was very much against the Shia and had an agenda against them. And after his death, that's when the appearance of the Hujjah took place, and that's one of the close signs.
A clear reminder of the narrations, of the prophecies that have been put into place, and we're seeing them coming to life in front of our eyes. Aba Al-Sadiq, from him his peace, he says we are the companions of the evidence. And that means for anyone out there who may not believe in Islamic narrations or Islamic scriptures, we take the truth from all religions because we believe that the Holy Bible, the Holy Torah, the Holy Quran, the narrations from Prophet Muhammad and his family, the speech and the directives given by the Eastern religions, everything that we find to be from a true religion of God has within it some truth. And that's why it would be remiss of us to simply discard it or to neglect it. God is much greater and far beyond the capacity of the human mind. And the people of the world right now, unfortunately, are confined to these ideas of race, of nation, of religion, of country, or borders. They believe that this is my book and that is your book. God doesn't see it like that. God doesn't frankly care. God cares about the truth. So for him to present to us messengers and prophets who are bringing to us books and bringing to us knowledge, for God it's one and the same. The problem becomes when people enter those religions and add corruption to them. But that has nothing to do with him. And he frankly doesn't really mind that we have, or he doesn't really like, I should say, that we have our own little niche. He wants people to understand that the truth is out there. And that's why we have narrations by Prophet Muhammad where he says, seek knowledge even if it means going to China. Why say that if the religion was meant to be an Arab religion and an Arab-centric mindset and regional thing? It's not a language thing, it's not a region thing, it's an everywhere and everyone thing. And that's why we're seeing right now Aba Al-Sadiq is in the same sunnah of his forefather, taking the truths from different narrations and presenting them to everyone.
Yes, you said earlier we are an evidence-based religion, and Aba Al-Sadiq eloquently uses the evidence from all of these different narrations to guide people to the straight and narrow path, the path of Moses, Jesus and Muhammad, and the path, as Aliyah said, to the truth. Follow the truth and the truth will set you free. This is the message, I think, behind everything Aba Al-Sadiq is essentially saying.
And I think it's a good segue into our next clip of Sacred Dialogues. And before we get there, I just want to add that any viewers out there who are not familiar, perhaps, with the Islamic teachings or not familiar with the books that are presented by the religion of Islam or by the words of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him and his family, do go out there and research. Don't see it that there is this bias and that you should follow the bias against Islamic narrations. Why do I say that? It's because, unfortunately, it's become a universal idea, a global idea, that anything to do with this religion could be dangerous or could be demonic or so on and so forth. But that's not the case in any sense of the word. God is a merciful God, and He has presented His truth in all true religions, and it is very much worthy to go out there and read those books and to delve into those teachings and scriptures and see for yourself what you find, particularly from the way that Aba Al-Sadiq has presented his forefathers, Muhammad and the successors from him. So should we go ahead to the next clip?
Yes. Go.
Since we are claiming that Imam al-Mahdi has appeared and that Imam al-Mahdi, Muhammad ibn Hassan al-Askari alayhi salam, is with us, and that this is the time of the rise of the Qa'im and the age of his da'wah and the age of the Raja. And we want to discuss the world and the signs of this time. I don't want to say it's the signs of the end times and the meaning of the end of the world, because that's not true. But it is the signs of the end of the world of Iblis, the end of the age of his rulership on the earth. And the narrations from Muhammad and the family of Muhammad, they mentioned that there would be this period where it would be the state of Satan. It would be Satan's rule on the earth. And this is from the time of Adam and his exit from the Garden of Eden, and until the time that appointed time that Satan told God or asked God that he would like for him to grant him respite till, or time until, right? Or to delay his punishment until. And that's the hour, Judgment Day, the day of the rise, Yom al-Qiyamah, or the Qiyam of the Qa'im. So there's this misconception too that the Muslims have, Sunni and Shia. A lot of the verses and the narrations that are talking about the day of judgment, Yom al-Qiyamah, the Sunnis understand it differently than the Shia. The Sunnis understand the day of judgment as being this day where in the end of the world, after the world's totally destroyed and all of humanity is standing before God, God rises on his throne, and then he proceeds to judge all mankind. And this understanding of the day of judgment happening in the hereafter is nullified by Muhammad and the family of Muhammad, salam, whom have explicitly stated that Yom al-Qiyamah, in most of the verses in the Quran, refer to the day of the rise, Yom al-Qiyam, Yom Qiyam al-Qa'im, the day of the rising of the riser, in which he judges mankind, and God judges mankind for everything that they have done, and the punishments come down. And the age that is mentioned in the book of Revelation and in the narrations of Muhammad and the family of Muhammad alayhi salam.
What an incredible phrase, the day of the rising of the riser. And you know, I'm really happy that that was brought up, and that the Qa'im has brought those words here to the show today, by the grace of God, because it's so essential that we explain that this manifesto, the situation in the world right now, and what we're presenting to you, how it all ties in. And this phrase right there, that is exactly what it is. That's the summary of it. The day of the rising of the riser. And the fact that, and today, by the way, we're hoping to actually go into a very deep conversation later on in the show where we talk about why it is the day of the rising of the riser, because there is an incredible prophecy, an incredible narration that explains in a very beautiful, eloquent fashion how all the way from the time of Adam till today, God has been sending prophets and messengers, and there have been certain messengers who brought covenants to their people. And the fact that these messengers had covenants that the people were meant to adhere to, but due to breaking those covenants, the new messenger had to come with a new one. And in total, we see in history there have been six covenants that were brought to the people. And in the end of the narration, we find that the Imam, from him his peace, is explaining and saying that when the riser rises, when he comes, he brings a new matter and a new book and a new jurisprudence. And he says, and that will be on the day of the Qiyam. Now, back in the day, people didn't understand what Qiyam meant. They thought that the day of the Qiyam means that's when everything is over. That's when everyone has died. The world has ended. The apocalypse is finished. And we are all in another realm where our souls are rising up and we're going to be judged.
Well, you stand in judgment, right?
Exactly.
This is what people think.
And they translate it as Day of Judgment.
Right.
But it doesn't say Day of Judgment. It says Day of Qiyam. And Qiyam means the rising. And the Qiyam of what? The riser. The
riser. SubhanAllah, and ABA-Sadiq, thank God that he sort of made this very clear for us, and as soon as he did, it made perfect sense. And the rising of the riser is extremely significant, and it is the judgment that is put on humanity. And the criterion of this judgment is that when the man from God comes with clear proofs, as all previous prophets and messengers came with, do the people accept him or do they reject him? And then when they reject him, then comes the judgment of God. Yes. Absolutely.
So we want to go ahead and actually jump into further segments on our show. I'm just going to double check something very quick. I think we're going to our next segment, which is to do with, yes, so we have actually a miracle that took place with one of the brothers in this community. That was a very interesting miracle, and it was very recent as well. A brother who has recently joined us by the name of Haytham. And Brother Haytham from Germany experienced something very fascinating here in our very own garden, a blessed garden that we see to be sacred and holy. Brother Haytham actually testified to it, and we filmed his testimony. We want to share that with the viewers today, so let's go ahead and check out Haytham's miracle.
Hello everybody, my name is Haytham, and I have been in the community of Aba Al-Sadiq around 9 months now. I wanted to share something with you. It may seem small for some, but for me it means a lot.
Like he said, you know, maybe it's something small to some people, but I know how big of a deal this is for him.
As a child, I loved apples, and I was known as Mr. Apple in the family.
I'm Haytham's wife, and honestly, since I know him, and it's been almost 10 years now, he always loved apples, he always told me, and he was always so sad that he couldn't really eat them.
As a young adult, I developed an allergy to apples. No matter which apple I ate, I got annoying symptoms like a burning mouth, itching ears, or a scratching throat.
And so I always saw him trying different apples, and you know, he really did everything you can imagine.
Yeah, sometimes I gave the fruit a chance and tried it, but nothing changed. The same symptoms over and over again. It didn't matter what kind of apple, whether it is organic or for someone's garden. Recently, my wife offered me an apple and I accepted it. I asked her where it came from.
Actually, when he took it, he said, "This is from Aba
Al-Sadiq's garden."
I said yes. He said, "Okay, I will try," and he did, and he ate the whole apple. And I think I actually watched him, like secretly watched him eating this apple, and I think he didn't even notice that he ate the whole apple.
And I asked myself, where are the symptoms? Why is there no scratching, no burning, and no itching? I didn't trust it and said to myself, maybe they will come later. But nothing happened.
Later he came to me and he said, "You know what? I ate the whole apple, and even until now I have no symptoms at all." So honestly, for me, this is a huge miracle. It's super huge because, I mean, what else is it but God gave him something back that he always loved just because he came to God.
For me, it's a miracle that because I find now my true home, and it's a garden of God, and this is why it helps me more to believe.
For me, this is a miracle because what are the chances that this happens here? You know, it never happened, no matter what he tried, but it happened here, that he can eat these apples now. So, subhanallah.
I really love listening to their voices and seeing those expressions on their faces, the way that Haytham and Clara, God bless them, a very strong power couple who are also great stars on our German show that broadcasts on this channel as well. So Haytham and Clara, two individuals from Germany with great faith in the Riser Aba Al-Sadiq, from him is peace, who have migrated recently to our community and who are expressing their faith in him and their dedication towards him by their hard work, their sincerity, and their work on this channel.
And great examples of people who heeded the words of the Qa'im of the family of Muhammad, true spiritual seekers from Germany. So if we have people who are looking for the truth, they will find the truth. And this is what Haytham and Clara did. And we have people from Slovenia, we have people from the West Indies, we have people from China. So the word is getting out there, and those who will look for the truth will no doubt find it. So take an example from these great seekers of truth and board the Ark of Salvation.
Absolutely. It's beautiful. Our family is growing, you know, and we love to bring people in as well and show you their faces and let you hear their voices, because it's really something. We are people that believe in a higher realm. We believe in the fact that there is the physical, but there's also the spiritual, and we believe that that has to do with the soul, and that there is a family that is the soul family. And it actually extends beyond the physical family, because it goes into places and races and tribes that you wouldn't think you're attached to or connected with. But the Riser has that miracle that he comes with, and that is prophesied for him, that he brings people together from different nations, and that he knows the people by their souls, and he connects them, and he tells them, informs them of how they are brothers and sisters, or mothers and fathers, or everything that you can think of, this whole family of cousins that we are. And we love each other so much based on the fact that there is a higher reality, and we feel it, we know it, we meet each other, we see the faith in one another, the faith towards God and towards the messenger of God, Aba Al-Sadiq, in this day and age. And we always say, I feel like I know you so well, even though it might be our first meeting with one another. We just know. We say, I just feel like I've known you all my life, right?
Again, that expression, kindred spirits, this is what we truly are, and we recognize each other. And that sense of familiarity has been told to us by the Qa'im of the family of Muhammad, is because we have lived together before and we have been companions before, because the body dies, but the soul never dies. And the soul takes on bodies in different times to achieve different missions. And the people who are the first to reach the riser of the family of Muhammad are truly the best of people, the best of families. And I can personally testify to that. The people who are around the Qa'im of the family of Muhammad are truly the best people on the face of the earth. And we invite you to join them. Join them today. Make your pledge of allegiance to the Qa'im of the family of Muhammad and join the greatest family, the soul family on earth.
Absolutely. I'd really love for us to actually go to another testimony that, that we have ready to show the viewers today. And that is a certain dream that was seen. And again, going back to dreams and the topic of dreams, we've talked about dreams before on our show, where people that believe that dreams are very significant. We know that scripture has spoken highly of the significance of dreams, the impact dreams can have on the destiny of an individual, and the fact that dreams can prophesy for us what is to come and can explain to us the situations of our lives. And the fact that the interpretation of dreams comes from the Spirit of God that is within the man that God sends as his messenger. As people who take very seriously the sunnah or the inheritance of the prophets and messengers, dreams and understanding dreams is part of that inheritance. And we see that dreams have that significance in our lives. We see them, we share them with one another, we learn from them. And sometimes the dreams that we see can enforce our faith because they indicate very strongly the fact that the path we are on is a godly path, is the straight path. Now we have on our lineup a dream that was testified to by a dear sister in this community, Sister Rozita. Sister Rozita is actually someone who comes up also on our Persian show that is aired on the other satellite channel that we have that broadcasts to the Middle East and North Africa. Sister Rozita had a very incredible dream that she really wanted to share with the world. And she testified to it. We have it actually lined up for today as well. So shall we go ahead and check out Sister Rozita's dream?
Let's take a look.
One of the first dream I had about Aba Al-Sadiq was because my brother, he was a believer for the past 13 years. And he always wanted to tell me about this dawah, about Aba Al-Sadiq and everyone, but I never used to believe in it. And whenever he tried to send me a photo or whenever he tried to send me YouTube links or anything, I never used to open it. So I didn't even know how he looks like. I didn't even know his name. I didn't even know anything about Imam Ahmad al-Hassan. So, and I always used to say, yeah, I did watch it. But to be honest, I never opened any of them. And after 12 years, I came to visit my brother, and I really wanted to see who's this guy that he always talks about. The only thing I knew was Imam Mahdi, that's all. And I came here, but Aba Al-Sadiq was really busy, so I didn't get the chance to meet him. But the only thing he told my brother was if she goes back to Iran, something bad will happen for her. But to be honest, I didn't really trust it. But one night before my flight, I had a dream. To be honest, to me, it wasn't a dream. I woke up in my room and I saw a really old, ugly woman. She was green, like it wasn't a human. To me, she didn't look like a human. And then she was pulling my hand. And at the same time, I got scared because she looked really weird and scary. And then at the same time, I could see two men standing by the door, and both of them had black hats and long hair, but I couldn't, first I couldn't really see them. And then and then at the same time when she was trying to pull my hand, one of them called me, and then he said, Rozita, come here, give me your hand. And I was really confused because I was like, who's this guy? I never saw these two. And then, but because she was pulling me, and at the end, when I woke up, because she pulled me really hard, and because I wouldn't really trust them, I didn't go with them. And then, but he wanted to grab my hand, but I didn't do it, to be honest. And then she pulled my hand, and then I woke up. So, and then I went back to Iran. Something really bad happened for me. Exactly after 2 weeks, I was about to die. And at that moment, I closed my eyes, and then I was like, God, either just kill me or help me. I don't even know who's that guy that my brother always tried to explain to me in these 13 years. But if it's Imam Mahdi, if it's like, I don't even know. But if you are really there, just save me, save my life, because I don't want to die. And if you save my life, I'm going to come and join your community, and I'm going to believe in you. That time I closed my eyes, and yeah, I was about to die. And I don't know how the police just walked into my house, and yeah, I woke up, I was in hospital, and the doctor said it was a miracle, like the way that police came to my house, like the things that they did to me. And that time again I had a dream. I was sitting in a dark circle, and I saw Aba Al-Sadiq again. Even that time I didn't know his name. And then he tried to grab my hand, and as soon as he grabbed my hand, I woke up, and the police just walked into my house. And after, when I came here, as soon as I walked into community, I saw him, and then I was like, oh my God, like I saw this guy in my dream 2 times. And when I went to his office, I explained all my dreams and everything that happened to me. And when I told him, I was like, there was another guy next to you. And when I described how he looked like, he just showed me his, like he had a picture on his phone, and then he showed me, he was like, was it this one? I was like, yeah, it was exactly him. He said, yeah, that was Imam Ahmad al-Hassan. And yeah, that was the time that I believed like Aba Al-Sadiq and Imam Ahmad al-Hassan.
A beautiful dream shared by our dear sister Rozita. Thank you so much, Rozita, for sharing that with us and sharing that with the world. It's necessary, I think, that we are grateful to God when He shows His signs around us and within us. As the Holy Quran says, we will show you our signs from all around you and from within yourselves. So I think that this is a beautiful indication of that very sentiment.
It really is, and a beautiful dream, and Sister Rozita is a beneficiary of this dream. Dreams are very much a part of the religions all over the world. In Islam, Christianity and Judaism, we have, of course, a dream of Prophet Joseph, which became true. There are also prophetic dreams that many people have had about impending disasters, and then they happen. And of course, the Prophet Muhammad did say that if you have seen me in the dream, then you have seen me, for Satan cannot take my guise. And it's the same for the family of Muhammad. So if you've had a dream of the Prophet Muhammad, if you had a dream of any messenger from God that has told you something that led to your guidance, and this is a true dream. And of course, the Prophet also said that dream is from prophethood. It is one part of the prophethood that is still in the people. So take dreams seriously. There have been many dreams that have guided people to this path. And don't just dismiss them. And don't, more importantly, let other people dismiss your dreams. This is a gift from God to you. Treasure it and safeguard it and act upon it.
Very good point. Absolutely. Now we're going to be discussing something quite critical to the call, and that is a bit of a refresher on the Mahdi's manifesto and the fact that we are now living in a time period where if we just turn our heads the other way and look at everything that has happened so far. If we look at the timeline, if we look at history, we're finding that God is very clearly describing the fact that we are in a new covenant. We have to accept and embrace that new covenant. Why? Simply because it has to be admitted that the previous ones were broken. And in the goal of the wise, Aba Al-Sadiq, from him is peace, has in the first 7 chapters, which you can download in 11 languages. The website is on the screen right now. You can see in the first 7 chapters how it is that mankind, unfortunately, did a disservice to itself. 6 times have covenants that have been presented by God been broken, and the consequences have been clear. And God has shown in Scripture, time and again, how it has come to play. Different religions or people of those religions will stick to the fact that they are of that religion quite stubbornly, refusing to admit that the contract was broken, refusing to admit that they did not live up to their end of the deal. But God is very honest, very truthful. If He says, I refuse to allow such and such, and if you do this, this will take place, we must believe Him. We have to take it seriously. And I think that it's necessary to understand the Mahdi's manifesto and to understand what's coming next. It's necessary that we see our history and look at how we got here today.
Exactly, Ali, and I think a really important point to mention about the covenants that you're talking about and that Aba Al-Sadiq details beautifully in the first few chapters of the book, The Goal of the Wise, is that it takes a lot to break a covenant. God, in His infinite mercy and His vast mercy, has sent these men from Him to guide the people. And in order to break a covenant, you really have to go all out. You have to disobey absolutely. Not only do you reject the man from God, but you kill him and his children and those appointed for your guidance. Like it's mentioned in the Quran that the children of Israel did. They killed many of their prophets and messengers. We know that Zechariah was killed, murdered brutally. We know John the Baptist had his head severed off. We know that the family of Muhammad, the Prophet Muhammad and his entire family were all killed in a very violent fashion, either murdered or beheaded or poisoned. And when you do that, that is when the contract with God breaks, and that is when the judgment of God comes. And this is something that you have to be mindful of, that God, even in His vast mercy, there are certain limits, certain lines that you cannot cross. And when you reject and kill the man that He has sent, this is a condition that breaks the covenant with God. And this has happened, unfortunately, also with the sixth covenant that the Prophet Muhammad brought. If the people had accepted him and the appointment of Imam Ali as his successor and the 11 Imams that came after Imam Ali, then perhaps there would not have been a need for a seventh covenant, because we would have been living in the divine just state already. But the fact of the matter is that all of them were brutally murdered, rejected completely, and now we find ourselves in the seventh covenant with God because the sixth one was broken by the followers of the Prophet Muhammad.
Absolutely. Very well said. There's an underlying understanding that we have in this religion and the call of Imam Mahdi, and it's that if God has sent a man, or if God wants to present a religion to the people or a truth to the people, then He will have it be that He sends His Spirit within a man that is known to be from Him, and that man will appoint for the people the next individual that they have to adhere to or they have to follow. And it's interesting because at the moment, if we look at the major religions in the world right now, let's take Christianity as an example. People in the Christian faith have ideals and beliefs that they know and admit to the fact that these ideals and beliefs were not from Jesus Christ. And these take up the majority of the religion that they're following at the moment. Their claim is that the ones who established those beliefs, and again, we're referring here to the so-called disciple Paul, they say that it's okay because Paul said that if Jesus died for my sins, then that's enough and that's what I need to know, and the end of the story. But Paul was never appointed by Jesus. Now the question becomes, why should we follow a man who wasn't appointed by the messenger of God? Why should we, or why is it right to listen to a man who doesn't have the Spirit of God within him when Jesus had already appointed the man that had to be followed? And this is the critical issue that we're seeing right now. If the people of the Christian faith want to be honest with themselves regarding the idea of having a covenant, and they want to believe that Jesus did, and we know this from the Gospels, appear to present a covenant to them, and yet they rejected Him. And now the core of the religion has become, let's just believe that He died for our sins and we are clear and exempt of all sin and all darkness. This is an idea that never came out of the mouth of Jesus Christ. Yet it has become the core of Christianity. And that is what we want to address today. The fact that covenants have been broken, what comes next? And we have on the line right now, our producer just told us, we have on the line right now Professor Arya Rasfar from the University of Illinois. And we really want to bring him into the conversation. Professor, can you hear us? Hello?
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. Hey there, Professor Rasfar. How are you?
The audio is not very clear.
Okay. I think the audio is, we're having a bit of a hiccup there with the audio. We're just going to look into that very quick. So, Professor Rasfar, is it better now? Hello?
Hello, can you hear us? Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, great.
Great. Yes, excellent. Ali was just mentioning the covenants and how the covenants of God have been broken through history and have led to these judgments that have come to humanity.
We're having connection issues.
It seems that there's some problems.
Yeah, it looks like we have some connection issues going on. I think we're going to have to just wait until it's fixed up behind the scenes. So we're just waiting for that technical issue to be fixed. But I really do hope we can bring Professor Razfar back here. Professor Razfar, for those out there who might be wondering why is that name familiar to me, he's actually the person who wrote the foreword. In The Goal of the Wise. If you open The Goal of the Wise and you find that foreword, it's a very brilliantly written explanation of what you're about to jump into when you read the Gospel, The Goal of the Wise. And he wrote that foreword, and
yes.
Yeah, we're very grateful for that.
Professor of linguistics at the University of Illinois. He has a deep interest in religions as well. He's an academic. He has knowledge of the Hebrew language, of Arabic, and he is very well versed in the teachings of Aba-Sadiq, and it will be really interesting to hear his insights on the manifesto that Aba-Sadiq has written at this time when there is so much chaos going around in the globe. I really hope we can get him back. But Alia, just to pick up from that point that you were talking about the covenant that was with Jesus Christ, and essentially what we're following today is a Pauline Christianity. A Christianity that comes from Paul. I think we have a message that he's back online. Hello, Professor Razfar. Hello, can you hear us? Hello?
Yes, can you hear me?
We can hear you. How can you hear us?
I can hear you. It's a little bit, the connection's a little bit scratchy, but I can hear you.
Okay.
All right, so Professor Razfar, we were talking about covenants and the fact that the manifesto of the Mahdi has been released and why it was released, the fact that we're in a new time where there is a new covenant and that the previous ones were indeed broken. We'd love to hear, if you can hear us, because I know there is a bit of a connection problem going there, I can hear the beeping. But if you can hear us...
I can hear you now.
Wonderful. We wanted a few words from you about the Mahdi's manifesto and what it means in this point in history, in this point of our time that we're living in, the fact that the manifesto's been released, what significance it holds.
Oh, okay, good. Well, thank you. Good morning to everyone. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
It seems we're having connection issues.
All right.
You're back.
Can you hear me now?
You're back, yes. Go ahead, Professor.
Yeah. So I think what I was trying to say was that the manifesto is a succinct and compressed version of the Goal of the Wise. And, you know, it focuses on 3 themes that I think are very important. And it's...
It seems to be a connection problem.
I think, unfortunately, we might have to cut this segment short. We were really looking forward to that conversation with Professor Arya Razfar, but it seems it's not meant to be today. Maybe we can get him back today or maybe on another day.
We really hope to get him back. I mean, I really want to hear Professor Razfar's thoughts on that and his words on it and show the viewers what it is that he has to say. So it looks like something's not working. We just got that message right now. We're going to have to cut that short, like you said, Irfan, but...
Technical difficulties happen on live shows. It's something we have to deal with, but alas, for another day, hopefully.
Yes. Tune in tomorrow if you want to catch Razfar. Now you have something to look forward to.
Yes, Professor Razfar coming up shortly. So yes, I think Professor Razfar was just about to delve into a very academic and incisive kind of analysis of the Manifesto of the Mahdi, which is a critical document written at a critical time for humankind, standing on the cusp of a potential war that threatens to not just be confined to the Middle East, but could very quickly turn global. If Iran in any way gets involved in a military conflict with Israel, then we know, of course, Israel is allied to the most powerful military on the face of the earth, which is the United States. The United States has its allies, and then, of course, Iran has its allies. There is that same kind of vibe, very much as it was during the World Wars I and II, where there were alliances with competing interests in the Middle East. And this conflict in the Middle East has the potential to draw in these big players, and they will be drawn in very, very quickly if things continue to escalate the way that they are.
Absolutely. Dr. Irfan, I know that the viewers have a great liking towards a certain segment that we do on the show, and there are days when we do have that segment and days when we don't, and we were hoping to go into that topic today. So do you think we should go ahead and talk about medicine of the Mahdis?
Yeah, I was thinking maybe we won't get the time to go into it because of the segment with Professor Asfar, but at last, where there is a crisis, there's an opportunity. And I have an opportunity to talk about something very fascinating. The medicine of the Mahdis, the medicine of the prophets and messengers who are also healers spiritually and physically, is a tradition that goes back a long, long way. Of course, the most famous of them was Jesus Christ, who healed the leprous, he healed the poor, he healed the blind, and many such examples of healings exist. And in the same manner, Aba Al-Sadiq and Imam Ahmad al-Hasan, from them is peace, have given us the cures to many ailments that afflict humanity in this day and age. And this is an act of great mercy and something to be very grateful for. Because even with the advancement of medical technology and sciences, there are certain conditions that we have not been able to treat satisfactorily. And the example of the condition that I wish to discuss today is a condition that is very well known by the medical community, and that is sickle cell disease or sickle cell anemia. So this is a condition where the red blood cells, due to a genetic inheritance, form abnormally. They form a sickle shape, which is another word for a crescent shape. This makes these red blood cells, which are of course the oxygen-carrying cells in the body that give us the ability to have energy and to metabolize our food and to generate all of these different chemical processes, biochemical processes that happen in our body. And once these red cells become limited and abnormal in their shape and structure, they can actually block critical arteries and arterioles and capillaries in the body, the blood vessels, and cause significant symptoms in their patients. Now, sickle cell disease is a disease that happens mainly in the tropical areas, sub-Saharan Africa, Southeast Asia. And it's interesting that the sickle cell disease exists in these places, because these are places where there are also malaria is endemic. So we have this problem, and actually in the West also, because of the migration of people historically, there are over 100,000 people of African origin living in America that have sickle cell disease, and also in the UK with the Afro-Caribbean population that we have. And as somebody who worked in the emergency department, you know, I came across cases where people would come in tremendous pain, what we call a sickle cell crisis, when these cells block these blood vessels in a complete way, and it causes tremendous pain for these patients. And immediately you have to bring them in, and you have to put a line in their arm and give them fluids and very, very strong opiate medicines, painkillers, that they then have to take over many hours, and then you have to monitor them very carefully. At its worst form, it can also cause a blockage of the smaller vessels, causing gangrene and other problems like this. So it's a serious illness. It's a prevalent illness, and at its very highest form, Aliyah, there's a cure that we have for it, which is it's bone marrow transplantation, right, but also stem cell transplantation and gene therapy, which has been discussed since I was at medical school all those years ago. So there is a curative way to approach this in terms of management, but that cure comes with a lot of drawbacks and side effects. For example, when you do a bone marrow transplant, there is a risk of having that rejected, because the immune system recognizes it as foreign and rejects it. And likewise, it can go the other way, which is graft versus host disease, where the cells that have been implanted into the person suffering, they actually attack the person, the host. So there's infertility, which is part of the process, because you need to suppress the immune system, and anything that suppresses the immune system increases your susceptibility to infection. Certain treatment to precondition the patients requires radiotherapy, and radiotherapy is of course linked to infertility, especially in women. So even the cures that we have are sort of laden with these side effects and problems that can happen before, during and after treatment. And so the Imam Ahmad al-Hasan revealed a cure from himself to the world for this crippling condition called sickle cell disease. And it baffles the mind. Nobody can really, when I first read the cure, I was completely amazed and astonished that how could this possibly cure a condition that is a problem in the genetics of the person? So a gene is faulty that you inherit from both parents, and then you have these abnormally shaped cells that then cause problems all over the body. And the Imam said that the cure for sickle cell disease is actually to be found in the chameleon. And this is also detailed in The Goal of the Wise. And when I first came across that, Ali, I was quite astonished, because we know that the chameleon exists in the same geographical locations as where sickle cell is most prevalent.
Exactly.
Which is fascinating. And also,
it's not a coincidence.
It's not a coincidence. And there never is with the sayings and teachings of Imam Ahmad al-Hasan and Aba Al-Sadiq. And specifically, the cure is to make the chameleon walk on the body. Now, scientists or people who have been who are well versed in the treatment of sickle cell disease will think, you're out of your mind. How can a chameleon walking on your body produce a cure for a genetic condition that causes red cells to behave this way? Well, to those scientists, I am a man also of faith. And when I read about the miracles of Jesus Christ, how he brought a dead man to life, which I believe he did with Lazarus, and there are scientists and doctors who are Christians and Muslims who have witnessed unexplainable miracles. And there's another example, of course, in the blind man who Jesus grabbed mud, and with that mud he rubbed it on the eyes, and then he told him to wash his eyes in a particular pool. And when he did that, his eyes were miraculously healed. These are people who were born blind. So if you believe in that, then you have to believe in the treatments that come from the men from God.
Exactly.
You know? And this chameleon treatment for sickle cell disease is absolutely fascinating. And it's something that I think, you know, let's put it to the test. I mean, you cannot reject something just because it sounds absurd to your ears. You really have to put things to the test and then give your judgment. Isn't this the scientific method? If the Imams from the Ahlul Bayt, if the men from God are giving us cures that don't make sense to us, doesn't mean that we reject them out of sight. I think the chameleon treatment is much safer than bone marrow transplant. And the problems that come, that huge list of problems, of which I mentioned only a few.
Great point.
And yeah, let's... it's something, you know, that Alia, that you've also heard other cures for other conditions that we don't have a solution for, that don't really make sense to our minds. But this is another proof upon us that if things that don't make sense to us are curing us, then the person who is coming with these cures has knowledge from the unseen that we don't have. And the Qa'im comes with the 25 letters of knowledge, which is more than anything that we've accumulated through our years and years of the scientific revolution. We have not even come close to this knowledge that comes from the Ahlul Bayt, that comes from the man appointed by God. And he has given us in his generosity and his mercy, seeing that the cures are less than satisfactory, much below satisfactory, and he's given us answers to these questions and given us cures to put to the test. So then it is with us to now test and then give our opinion.
Exactly, absolutely. And it's such an amazing piece of knowledge. I believe we have someone on the line? All right, sorry, misunderstanding there. But yes, the thing about this cure and the fact that it's so fascinating to hear that you could just take an animal like the chameleon and just have it walk over the skin of the patient, and once it would walk, and I believe in the Goal of the Wise, the Imam from his peace explains it must walk from head to toe all over the body in order to heal the patient. And as simple and strange as it sounds, it also brings to light the idea that the human body and the experience of the physical has in it another component. It has to, otherwise it wouldn't make sense that Jesus can cure the blind using mud. And the fact that there is an energetic component to the physical that God understands and the spirit understands, but the physical body doesn't necessarily know, or the human being doesn't know. We as people cannot be aware of the unseen, but God in His grace does inform us of it through His messengers. And the chameleon cure, in order to understand that, one must take a step back and have faith and realize there's more out there than we know. For anyone who's skeptical and who's wondering how could this be, I think what you said is brilliant. Let's put it to the test. We're saying that ABA-Sadiq is a man from God, and we're saying that this cure is something that actually does work. If anyone out there wants to try it or wants to see if it can work for someone that they know, then go ahead and try it out. See if there is someone that you know who has this disease. Try the cure and let us know. You can contact us very easily. We have a phone number, we have an email address, we have a website. Please reach out to us and let us know what you think and how it's been for you trying this cure out. Very fascinating.
Yes.
Very, very amazing.
And we, like Alia said, we would love to engage with the people. If you have questions, if you have certain medical problems, if there is something out there from ABA-Sadiq or Imam Ahmad al-Hassan, I would be happy to share that with you. If it's something else, another condition or problem, then we can, of course, discuss the solutions that Western medicine gives us. The Imam Ahmad al-Hassan did say that Western medicine has in it some good things as well. Its diagnostic tools, the way it reaches to the problem in terms of the presenting complaint, diagnosis, and all of this is good. It's just that management phase. There are certain management of certain conditions that are not adequate, that are not good enough, and that is where we can try the medicine of the Mahdis.
Now, I think we're reaching the end of our program for today, so we want to let you know that you can download The Goal of the Wise and the Mahdi's Manifesto in several languages from our website, which is on the screen right now, theahmadireligion.org. You can contact us using the phone numbers on the screen, and we would love to get in touch with you. We regularly connect with and network with different people from different parts of the world, whether they are professors of academia or brothers and sisters like ourselves who are simply trying to understand how it is that they can best support God's movement on earth, a movement that calls for humanity first. We recently had joining our community for a visit, dear brother Idnan, who we also interviewed, and you can find his full interview on the I Found the Mahdi playlist here on our YouTube channel, the Ahmadi Religion of Peace and Light YouTube channel. And we wanted to give him a quick shout out as well. Thank you very much, brother Idnan, for visiting, and we do hope to see you again very soon. The movement is growing, the movement towards peace, towards a spiritual world where people are awake and alive and are no longer suffering, no longer oppressed or homeless or hungry. Do you want to join the movement that holds the banner of allegiance is to God? If you are an individual who believes that God reigns supreme, then go ahead and research this call. Go ahead and watch the lecture series and the sermons by the riser of the family of Muhammad Aba Al-Sadiq and see what it is that he has to say and ask God about us. The most important key to knowing how to get into the true faith, right?
Yes, and if you would like to join the ranks of brothers like Brother Zong from China or Brother Yan from Slovenia or Brother Idnan from the UK, then the doors are open and people are waking up and they are paying attention to the sermons and lectures and teachings of Aba Al-Sadiq, from him is peace, the riser of the family of Muhammad. Just as they found the truth through seeking, you too can find it. God wants everyone. It's not about the religion, the color, the creed, the caste that you come from. It's about a sincere heart and sincerely seeking the truth and the man from God and the spirit that he embodies.
I hope you've enjoyed today's various topics that we presented to you, and we're going to be coming back live again tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock UK time. So stay tuned and do enjoy the rest of our programs that are being broadcast on this very channel. Until tomorrow morning, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.